Hi, this is Andrea Vicari. You're listening to Jazz Doodles on jazzlondonradio.com, and I've got an interview with jazz pianist Lynne Arriale. Lynne won a prestigious award, the Great American Jazz Piano Competition. Since then has led a very varied and interesting career, performing with the likes of Randy Brecker, George Mraz, Benny Golson and Marion McPartland, to name but a few. She's made 21 albums, 14 under her own name, and many of them have been put on best of jazz lists. She's also a professor of jazz studies and director of small ensembles at the University of North Florida. The first track you're going to hear is from her album Give Us These Days, and the actual tune that you're going to hear has the same name.
Hi, Lynne. Nice to speak to you.
Nice to meet you. I was looking at your website, and you just totally blow me away. Do you ever sleep at night? I can't believe you're doing everything. You're doing everything.
Well, all I can say is that I've got a very helpful partner in my life who does all my PR and stuff for me. So I think it's a team effort there. But thank you very much. That's very nice to hear.
Well, it's amazing.
So you're playing at the Pizza Express in Dean Street on Monday the 14th of October and Tuesday the 15th of October, and you'll be playing material, I presume, from your latest CD, Give Us These Days, which
yes,
features yourself on piano, Dutch bassist Jasper Sonson and and Jasper Van Houten on drums. And there's a special guest on vocals, Kate McGarry, that's on the CD. Who will be coming to England with you?
Jasper Thompson on bass and E.J. Strickland, who's the great drummer from New York. That's my touring group.
Okay. And I was just interested in, looking at your recordings, that a lot of the trio recordings use American musicians. I just wondered, what was the idea behind using Dutch musicians this time?
I had an opportunity to record for Challenge Records, and they introduced me to Jasper Thompson, and we decided to co-produce this album. And I had listened to his music, and I loved his playing, his concept, and I thought it would be great chemistry between us, and it turned out to be. And it really was the beginning of a very wonderful friendship and collaboration. And we're co-producing our next CD, or my next CD, which we'll be recording in October, prior to coming to Pizza Express.
Fantastic. We heard Give Us These Days, which is the title name of the CD, but also the name of the track that we heard before you came on the show. What are we going to hear now? We're going to hear another piece from this CD.
Let's hear Appassionata. It has kind of a flamenco, a very energetic feel to it, kind of very interactive within the trio.
That was Appassionata, and you're listening to Andrea Vicari interviewing Lynne Arriale. You've recorded prolifically, and not only with your own trio, but also other musicians such as Randy Brecker, George Mraz, Larry Coryell, and so on. I counted 21 albums on your website, of which 14 are your own. Many of the albums, including your latest one, Give Us These Days, have been included on the, in brackets, Best of Jazz CD lists, and many have topped the Jazz Week radio charts. I just wondered what it was about your music that you think is so appealing to the public.
Well, I just feel that it's very important to reach out to people through our music, and you never know what the result will be. I have to just start with my intent, which is to communicate with people and to maybe give them a little peace. And by that I mean our lives are generally so stressful. There's so much going on for everybody, especially nowadays when the speed of life seems to have increased dramatically. I'd like, when I play a concert or when people listen to our music, to have them be taken away by the music, even just for a few minutes. That's all I can really, address, because I never know what the response will be. I'm very grateful when there's a positive response. And when I listen to the music, I imagine myself not being a musician and just listening and, just feeling what I'm feeling. And that's kind of what I go with, so I can listen with two sets of ears, one as a musician, but another as someone who's, just likes music.
That's an interesting concept, thinking about listening to the music if you weren't a musician. I'm not sure if I thought of that. I always think one of the things I want to do is communicate with the public, and I like to think that what I write does communicate, and it seems to be very important to me. But now saying that's a very interesting concept. Imagine you're not a musician listening to something.
Mm-hmm.
Let's listen to another track from your CD. What would you like us to play now?
I'd love it if you played Woodstock. This is a tune that was written by Joni Mitchell, and it was a tune that was a very important song in the U.S. During the 60s. It kind of represented questioning everything and really a revolution in thinking. And I wanted to include this in the album. And I had kind of a different treatment than the original, but I always like to do that with tunes, to kind of shine a new light on the original without hopefully losing the essence of the original song.
was Woodstock, and we're playing some music from Lynne Arriale's latest CD, Give Us These Days. Lynne, you won the 1993 Great American Jazz Piano Competition. I presume that's a really huge achievement, winning something like that. And the reason I say that is I witnessed it for myself, what a high level of piano playing there is in the States. I'm talking about jazz specifically. I was recently a judge a couple of years ago in a jazz piano competition in South Africa, the UNISA jazz piano competition. And I mean, the Americans were up there with the Dutch and the English, and then there was some South Africans, but they tended to be the countries that had a lot of jazz education programs. There were more people entering the competition, but there was definitely a very high standard. So I'm just thinking, you won one of those competitions. That's an amazing achievement. And I wondered to what extent did this help your career as a jazz pianist?
Well, first of all, thank you. I think you get some media attention when you win a competition, but the most important thing for me was the actual experience of preparing for it and participating in the competition, because each contestant had 20 minutes to play to an audience and a panel of judges. In preparation, you know that you are being judged. You don't just think you're being judged. You know you're being critiqued. And I had to think about how I would hopefully reach the audience immediately in terms of choosing repertoire that was varied and that had something that would, connect with people. And so that preparation, I really worked for months thinking about that, because there wasn't a whole set, like a 15-minute set, where you could say, okay, I'll just start with this tune and, it'll kind of progress in this direction. It's a very short amount of time. Everything had to be timed, and there was a lot to think about. So that experience, I think, was really important, just doing that and having the experience of playing before and after other musicians. And the musicians were stellar, and they were so inspiring. Bill Charlap was one of the musicians, and there were other, just great pianists that I loved hearing. So it was a positive experience
as
for me.
As well as the experience, though, do you feel that when you won that competition, did suddenly doors open that had been shut before, or was it just not really make a difference? I mean, I would have hoped that suddenly, you're being, catapulted into the limelight. Did that occur?
I think that helped. It definitely helped, and it gets people, journalists' attention when something like that happens. So I think it definitely helped.
Great. Let's hear another one of your tracks from your latest CD. What would you like to play now?
Let's do Let It Be. This was written by Sir Paul McCartney, but it was credited to both Paul McCartney and John Lennon. And I thought this tune was really appropriate for the album because just the lyrics talking about difficult times, and somehow we have to let go at times. And I know the story that most people know, that Paul was having a very difficult time in his life, and in the middle of his dreams, his mother came to him and said, "There will be an answer, let it be." And I find that sentiment very comforting. And so I wanted to include that in this collection of music.
That was Let It Be, and that was from the album Give Us These Days. Lynne, you're a professor of jazz studies and small ensembles at North Florida University. And on your website, you've got a page dedicated to jazz education. Is teaching something you feel is important? And how do you fit it in with such a demanding performing career?
Well, it's a challenge to balance everything, but I think most musicians nowadays balance a lot. I know you do, and it's amazing that we can do all the things that we do, but that's part of being a musician nowadays, and I feel very grateful to be a professor at UNF. The students are wonderful, and the faculty is just world class. Danny Gottlieb is, our drummer, and he's a personal friend of mine. I mean, and the department was started by Bunky Green, the eminent saxophone player, and there's such a great energy in the department. The students are open and want to learn. There's no arrogance. They just really want to continue to grow. And I find teaching incredibly rewarding because I have the challenge of having to explain things many different ways to different students because everyone learns in a different way. They all need fundamentals, obviously, but figuring out the way to explain something. And if the first time they don't really get it, and sometimes you try another way of explaining it, and then it's really nice to see when the light turns on in their consciousness that they understand and they're able to take the next level in their playing. So I love my students, and they're going to be terrific musicians.
As a female jazz pianist, I often get asked questions about my gender and how it affected my career, either for the good or bad. But has being a woman playing jazz affected your career, Lynne?
It probably has, but I will never know. Unless you could have an experiment where there were a person that played exactly like I did, that happened to be a man, there would be no way of knowing, of comparing how one's career would progress. That's one of the unanswered questions, and I never think about it because it's just, I need to spend my time making music and hopefully passing on information to a new generation of musicians.
I mean, talking about the new generation, I mean, you are a role model, whether you see yourself as a role model, because there are very few women playing jazz professionally. And I wondered, as a role model, and an educator, do you see that gender imbalance changing in regards, maybe, I mean, looking at maybe some of the professional female jazz musicians who perhaps are in their 20s and stuff? Do you see more women coming through?
Definitely. Yeah, a lot more. And we've got a ways to go. But there have been some studies about students coming up through middle school and how at a certain point in their education, there are equal numbers of young men and young women in ensembles, and then there's a big drop-off, I think, around high school. And the question is, why is that? We don't know if there's gender bias in teaching, and it doesn't have to be blatant. It could be very subtle, but we don't know. And so what we need to do is to encourage all our students, but definitely encourage the young women, and hopefully give them the extra confidence they need that they really can do this. They can do anything.
I think you're right. I mean, I've done some research on this. I'm not going to bang on about it now on your interview, but it's on my website if people are interested. But a couple of things that I think are important. One is role models. Young women being able to see other women playing jazz professionally will make them think that it's possible. And also, I'm convinced that the rise of jazz education and a clear pathway how to study has definitely helped young women be able to learn jazz and obviously discover a lot for themselves. But anyway, that's a kind of that
absolutely
could be a program in itself. But I wanted to just talk about it a little bit. I'm just going to ask you one more question, and then I'm gonna let you go. As well as the 2 dates at the Pizza Express on Monday the 14th and Tuesday the 15th of October, I just wondered if you had any other dates in Europe, because the show does go out worldwide.
So after Pizza Express, we have Jazz Club Lustenau in Austria on October 18th, and on October 19th, Chorus Club in Lausanne, Switzerland, and October 20th, we have Jazz Club Luzerne in Luzerne, Switzerland. And these are clubs that I've played before, and I'm looking forward to coming back.
Great. Fantastic. Well, I hope that you get full audiences. I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you in person on the 14th and coming to hear you play. And thank you so much, Lynne.
Likewise.
We're going to play one more tune to finish this show. And so here is Over and Out from Lynne Arriale's latest CD, Give Us These Days.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been just a great pleasure talking with you, Andrea.